G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by Crowcast, of course, as we crawl towards the end of trade week, and we all know that everything happens on the last day, which happens to be tomorrow, so there's plenty to talk about even though there hasn't been a lot of activity. So without any further ado, let's crack straight into it. G'day everyone, welcome to Tuesday Night Live this sunny Tuesday, the 12th of October, and just about reached the end of trade week for another season, and as usual everything's going to script with pretty much bugger all happening of any note, and everything will happen in the last 20 minutes tomorrow. Joining me to try and wade through the snooze fest is my usual partner in crime, Peter. How you going, Pete?
Fine, how are you?
I'm not too badly, thank you, for a Tuesday. And I've noticed, just as we thought we were going to go without him, Mac has joined us. How you going, Mac?
Sorry there, had to do a bit of a tidy up for the missus. She was a bit shitty with me, so that's why I was late. I'd had a few things lying around. I'm a bit of a slob.
Well, I've got to say, Mac, that's probably the biggest news of trade week so far, is that you're in the doghouse. There's not much else going on.
No, probably the biggest thing that's happened today.
Oh God! Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us in Discord chat, and of course joined us on YouTube, of course. I can't see it being too long a cast tonight, because really we're going to talk about the same things that we talked about last bloody week, because nothing much has changed, has it? We've still got Sydney holding out hope on young Geordie Dawson, and just a slight whiff of maybe Godfather 2.0 to entice North Melbourne for pick one, although the chances of that happening are slim to none, really. But really, that's about it as far as the Crows are concerned.
It's a little bit in a different space, though, Fiend, in the sense that, I mean, we're now coming to crunch time, and we are still, unusual for us. We've held firm. We've just offered Melbourne first and said take it or leave it. And I think Sydney will capitulate tomorrow, unless they think that, no, we won't do the trade, and we will back ourselves to talk Dawson into staying with us instead of going into the pre-season draft.
That's not happening.
No, I don't think so. But I mean, that's just a wild chance. But as far as Dawson goes, the reason I think he will get done is because they're after Laddams as well, and Sydney, and I think they'd like to tidy us up first, then do the Laddams deal, knowing what they've got in their hand. So, I think it'll probably get done.
Pete, does it make you laugh that on the one hand they think they're being undersold for Dawson, and on the other hand they're willing to pay what looks like being pick 12 with a bit of a swap going the other way for Laddams, for God's sakes?
It's just it's almost to the point of sounding juvenile a little bit, and I can only think that it's that the whole triumvirate of Laddams, Dawson, and Sydney that are holding the thing up, because they obviously want to get their way on the Laddams deal. So it was interesting. Just not long ago, Fox Footy put out their report for the day, and we have held very, very firm on the Melbourne future first rounder. Sydney were asking for a swap of this year's seconds from 39 to, was it 33? I think.
Yeah, 33. Yeah. 33,
which we rejected out of hand. So we weren't even prepared to go as far as that second rounder trade. We have said what we've told the Fox report is that there will be nothing else other than the Melbourne first rounder, and that needs to be taken tomorrow morning, as we've got other things to move on to. So we're saying now whether that's it's maybe we'll just be really negotiating, or it may be that they've got some other irons in the fire with that Melbourne pick, and I'd actually.
Well, Pete's just dropped out.
Yeah, well, just taking it on from there. And Tom Morris was the one that reported the Crows would set us a deadline for Sydney to reply by tomorrow morning because they have other negotiations in work that they would like to escalate on Wednesday morning. That was, I think, how he put it. Now, then looking through the Twitter rumour mill, and there's been various options being put forward. One of them is, for example, that we may be having another crack for Horn Francis, and that we would be, in this particular case, we might be putting pick 4, our first rounder, and maybe try and throw Mackesy instead of the first rounder for next year. Now, whether that's got any legs or not, one doesn't know. Or Scholl was the other player that was mentioned as a possibility as well. And apart from that, I don't really know what else we're going to do.
I was going to ask that question.
Have I dropped out?
No, you're back now, Pete. You just sort of faded off into the distance there for a minute.
Sorry.
No, you're all good. I guess it begs the question as to what else we could have lined up. I could imagine any sort of moves would be around next year's picks, I would have thought. We don't have a lot of wiggle room left because we've basically given up most of our hand for 2021. So it's a little bit difficult. I just thought that I'd quickly, just for the sake of filling out 45 minutes, gentlemen, just quickly run through what we've actually seen transpire so far this trade period. So we got what looks like being 42 for Kelly from Essendon, who went as an unrestricted free agent. Maybe O'Chol's gone from the Suns to Tigers as a free agent for pick 38. George Hewitt's gone to Carlton. I don't think it's a bad get for Carlton as a restricted free agent. Sydney gets 39 for that. And then Collingwood grabbed a few picks off Gold Coast. So Collingwood, what did they give up there? No, Gold Coast got a future second rounder and a future third rounder and a future fourth rounder from Collingwood. And Collingwood got a second round, or 22, 46 and 58 and 79, which are all points for Dacos, obviously. Nathan Kruger went from Geelong to Collingwood for pick 41. Finlayson went to Port. I don't know why Port did that deal, but Finlayson to Port. I know Finlayson, I think, wanted to get back to Adelaide for personal reasons. So future third rounder for Finlayson, probably not a bad deal. Dunstan from St Kilda goes to Melbourne as an unrestricted free agent. That's good insurance for him. Of course, we had the monster deal from between Melbourne and the Bulldogs, Adelaide and St Kilda, which I won't go through all the machinations, but how it ended up is that Melbourne ended up with 17 and 37 and 49 in this draft. The Bulldogs get 23 and 44 and 45. We get 33 and Melbourne's future first, and we also got 75 from the Bulldogs, and St Kilda 62 and 66 and a future fourth from us. Just before we tidy up on the rest, what did you boys think of that mega trade? How do you think? I thought it was pretty good. Obviously designed to get us into the first round next year.
Well, I thought it was a brilliant one, Fane. I mean, did it very, very well. And if you look at now what we're talking about for Jordan Dawson, we're talking about having spent pick 23 the Kelly Picken and some loose change that we weren't going to use anyway. So it's it's brilliant, brilliant.
Yeah, Mac.
Yeah, I totally agree. I'm in the same camp as Pete. I thought it was an excellent move, really, because it would seem to me that we only want to really pick 2 players at most for this year, and as you suggested earlier, theme that we may use 1 or 2 spots to upgrade key players from the rookie list onto the main list. So, I think it was a real good get. I know that Adelaide would love to keep it as well if it was at all possible, because of the fact that you got the locations ranking situation next year, and it would be still nice to have that particular first round pick as well as our own. So to have good trading stocks. So I think Adelaide, in some ways, would actually like to take it to the pre-season draft. I know I've had chats with Pete privately that he was a bit concerned that Dawson might not be wedded to us, that he was sticking up for his club, and I think he did the right thing in saying that he would like to see his club rewarded appropriately for his departure.
When did he say
that? He said that right at the beginning.
Find me a quote, Macca.
Pardon?
Find me a quote.
I'm not with you.
He has not been quoted as saying diddly squat.
Well, that's well. Otherwise, put this way, the experts have said that that's what was said.
The experts said that he was going to Port too. Look,
the point I was going to make.
Yeah, go on.
No, can I? I hadn't finished yet.
Go on.
But that was in the early days, and in recent times, I think probably it's only about 2 days ago that he's come out and said that we have come out and said that he is totally committed to us, even if we go through the pre-season draft.
No one has said anything.
So,
no one has said anything, Mac.
I'm not with you.
Jordan Dawson. Yeah, but Mark Rasciuto's Mark Rasciuto. He's on radio. Jordan Dawson and Michael Dowdy have not said jack shit. And that's the bottom line. And the only reason everyone's getting angsty about the deal is because the media have been swirling around this for a week and a half because they got nothing else to talk about. The simple fact is that we've been putting our best foot forward to put a deal in front of Sydney that we felt was fair. And let's not forget, before we did the mega trade, we offered we had an in principle deal to get the Bulldogs pick 17, and yes. we offered that to Sydney. Now, obviously, most pundits would agree that a pick 15 to 18 next year is probably worth a little more than 17 this year, simply because of the fact that there's a lot of unexposed talent in this year's draft, so it becomes a bit of a crapshoot fairly early on this year, whereas next year most of the young lads will have a year's worth of exposed form, so it'll be a little bit more of a known quantity. But at no stage has Jordan Dawson or Michael Dowdy come out and said that they wanted Sydney to get a fair deal. At no stage did Jordan Dawson or Michael Dowdy come out and say that they were humming and hawing over, if it went to the pre-season draft, that they might look to stay at Sydney. There's been absolutely no comment from the Dawson camp whatsoever, and I think that's utterly appropriate. I think he made his decision, and it's up to the people that are employed to negotiate these things to negotiate them. And I think the club has handled this extremely professionally. They haven't played to the media game apart from dropping a couple of little clues on Rasciuto's show that we're quite happy with the pre-season draft scenario as leverage. I think we've actually played this one really well, Mac. But it's wrong to say that Dawson said anything because he hasn't said anything.
Pete, what was your understanding?
So I was, and let's just factor in my, I think maybe 7 or 8, I think maybe stubbies of Peroni when I was posting on Saturday night with you and Party Magic.
Was it only 7 or 8?
I was looking at a report I was looking at a report from Channel 7, which had the fact they ran with a whole line of the fact that Longmire had been talking to Dawson.
Yep.
That Dawson didn't want to go to the PSD. That blah blah blah. And so I on that particular chat, I just posted the fact that it would be good when if Seven are running a fairly mainstream article like that, if they just came out and perhaps restated their commitment. That was pretty much where I was coming from.
Yeah, it since
so
came
it
out,
depends on how much.
It since came out, Pete, that Longmire's discussion with Dawson was like days ago, and there's timing has been quite interesting with some of these reports because they're reporting like things that they're reporting haven't necessarily happened on the day, so and a lot of clutching at straws. Most media outlets, when they're considering what we're offering Sydney, feel that we've acted fairly, and that we've offered a decent proposition under the circumstances, given that the player's uncontracted and given that we have picked 4 in the pre-season draft, which makes it more than likely that Jordan would get to us through the pre-season draft. So there's not a huge amount of leverage that Sydney have, and I think the club can be pretty comfortable, and I think we've certainly shown Jordan that we have made every effort to provide a deal to Sydney, which is probably not as much as what they'd like, but probably, if you hand on heart, probably a little bit more than what Adelaide would like, to be perfectly honest with you. I think at the beginning of the trade period, we were probably set on 23 for Geordie. But we moved off that position fairly quickly, and we're willing to come to the party. So the best deals are usually the ones where neither party are entirely satisfied. And
well, that's actually true. That's true. But we actually did. Yeah, you're quite right. We did think that 23 would be the centrepiece, and we probably might have to add another pick on top of that. And I think that's what we thought originally. It was interesting. The Scribes that, in probably most camps, thought that they valued him as a first rounder, and the guy that ex-Sydney, I can't remember what his bloody name is. He said he was a top 10. Well, because he's certainly not a top 10. But I think now all the Scribes are saying exactly what you're saying, Fane, that first rounder is maybe a little bit light, but that's what they're going to get, so take it.
Yeah, so and kudos to Reedy for really turning 23 and junk into that pick, because so really,
absolutely,
even though we're handing over a first rounder, we haven't really had to move from that 23 positions, apart from throwing in picks that we weren't going to use. So he's done really well, guys. Just moving on, what do you think about if we do have by tomorrow afternoon we do have that pick? My gut feeling is that there's still a bit of business to be done at the top of the draft order. Whether that be tomorrow or whether that be on draft night, I still have a funny feeling that there's some business to be done potentially with either GWS or Gold Coast. If GWS are interested in Mac Andrew, I think that there's a real opportunity to dislodge that pick 2 from them if we've got the right ammunition. Because I just have that. I think we talked about it last week. That pretty sure that obviously they would love Jason Horn, but pretty sure Callaghan's very, very high up on their list. And I think I'll just run this to ground just quickly, but I think that if we look at the description that Reedy gave, which was the powerful, speedy, guy that can go forward, that's who they were looking for in the draft. You're really looking at Horn, Callaghan, Erasmus, or Josh Gota.
Yep.
Now I reckon Gota, he'll be, you'd trade back for him. You wouldn't use 4 on him. You would for Erasmus. So if we're prepared to sit, then Erasmus might be in the front because he won't get past Fremantle at 6.
What about Ward, Pete?
Well, Ward is that he's just that more of what we've got. Macca, he's a 180 centimetre inside midfielder, and no, and Hobbs the same. No criticism, but neither of those two players fit the description that Reedy put out.
Yeah.
No, they are genuine midfield. That's it. If you're talking about that the powerful, speedy, go forward type, then you're really in that top 10 or so. They're the 4 players that fit that description. Now they might go, they might move away from that description. I'm not sure on draft night, but as Reedy has said it, they to me are the 4. And look, Davo puts up Rochelle, possibly Josh Rochelle as well. So he may be one as well. But I'd be disappointed if you're taking Rochelle at 4, to be honest.
That'd be a reach.
Yeah.
I think that if it's Rochelle Goda, they'll trade back. If it's Erasmus, they'll probably sit where they are. But I still think that they're eyeing off Callaghan at 2. And,
absolutely.
And so I think that that's where the business will be that we've still got to do.
Yeah, I'm thinking 100% the same way you, Pete, because he does fit all the requirements that Reed was talking about. So, and look, he's going to be a quality player. So, yeah, I'd be quite happy if we ended up with him. Just one question I was going to raise with you guys. We put up what was supposed to be a godfather offer for Vaughan Francis, and in some ways, do you agree with me that we might have been lucky that it gets knocked back?
God, no. Absolutely not. And, Macca, I'll tell you this, nobody ever puts their best offer up first. And I fully expect, Pete's talking about business to do at the top of the draft, I fully expect there to be another offer, either tomorrow or on or before draft night. That was not our first and last offer. And I'm telling you right now that everyone's going on, three first round picks for one. Well, it's not. It was a swap of first round picks and one first round pick next year, and then a slide from 18 to 23 or whatever it was. So it wasn't as massive a deal as what many people made it out to be. And my personal view, and everyone has their own view, and my personal view is that Jason Horn is worth going 1,000% at trying to get that pick, and I wouldn't mind betting that there's another deal in the pipeline.
Well, I've got 2 sides of my thoughts on that. Sorry, Pete, and I've been very interested in your thoughts on it. I've got one says to me, I look at that kid and I watch him play and I think I can see another, not exactly an Ablett, but a combination between a Dangerfield and an Ablett, and I think he could very easily be one of the best players that have come through the draft for many, many a long year, and would love to have him in our side. The downside to the trade would be is that, let's just say you were giving up, I mean, for example, Richmond put up 3 genuine ones. Is if what happened to him, exactly what happened to the Gold Coast one. What's his name?
Rao.
Wonder Boy. Rao, yeah.
Yeah, but you could say that about anyone, Mac. You could say that about any player you pick.
I know, but there always is that danger. And look, I would love to have him. Don't get me wrong. I'd love to have him. He's one of the best players I've ever seen, and I think, as I said, he could be another Ablett type player. But just that little bit of nervousness about the fact of how much you're giving up for it. And what do you think, Pete?
Just really quickly, just way back in the chat, Inquisitor asked a question of me directly about, is there another club that would be willing to trade up for another player besides Callaghan? I understand from what I've read, I think Richmond are pretty hard on for Hobbs. Yep. So you might get a knock on the door from Richmond, because our pick 4 would be pretty much in the Hobbs zone if he's available. So that's just one for to think about. I'm in the all-in for Horn. I think if if your professional recruiting staff identify him as one of the SA players of a generation, and are saying you're prepared to put in that kind of collateral, then just do it.
Just get it done.
Just get it done. And you know what? If you make a mistake, you make a mistake. And if the best player in the draft ends up coming from pick 16, well, it is what it is, isn't it? Yep. You can only go with what the information that you've got. And right now, everything tells us that Horne-Francis will be one of the best SA players, that we've seen. And I think if you look at in years gone past, with guys like Lukosius and Rankin and those guys that have been talked up, were they playing those real sort of gritty inside breakaway minutes that Horne-Francis has been playing? Probably not. To me, you just pay what it costs, and if you have to shift a player, then you shift a player.
So let's just think about what we can offer. If we assume that Sydney are going to end up folding and taking Melbourne's future first, that takes that off the table. That leaves us with 4 on next year's first rounder, which could be anywhere from 2 to 6 or 5, depending on how we go. Then it comes down to a player, and there were a few whispers around over the last 24 to 36 hours about North Melbourne being keen on getting a key position player, and that throws someone like Elliot Himmelberg or Jordan Butts into the frame. I don't think a tool like Frampton or Murray would interest them. I wonder about Worrell, even though he's quite raw and unexposed. But there were some whispers about Worrell that we won't go into earlier in the year. And Fisher Mackesy was the other one, who is capable of playing at either end of the ground and looks like a bit of a forward more than a defender at this stage. If we were to put 4 next year's first and a player together, instead of Melbourne's future first, which is probably going to be 15 to 18, is that palatable?
I would actually do, yes. I feel much better about that. Because if it was Mackesy, for example, he hasn't really set the world on fire. But then again, big blokes often take a lot longer, and he may still develop into a good player. But yeah, that way, for some reason, it ends up much the same result for him, but it does seem more palatable.
Pete?
No, I think you have to look behind the scenes a little bit and say, look, all of these guys are contracted players. Yep. And so you're going to have to try and shake out the one that wants to be shaken out.
Yes.
And to me, there's been no signs of Geordie Butts or Elliot or any of those guys. They all seem pretty committed. The only one that has wavered has been Fisher, and I know that we all know the reasons why he was. We know that his family, there were health problems in his family, so he had a very, very understandable and difficult time, particularly with COVID and all that stuff that was going on. So there was a whole lot of stuff going on in the background for Fisher that affected his pre-season greatly, and for me, gives him a pass for this year. So you have to say that he's probably, through his personal circumstances, he's potentially up to a year behind in his development.
True.
So do you say, is he the one that you can shake loose by saying, look, here's, we want you, we love you, we don't want to trade you, but if there was ever going to be an opportunity for you to go, this is one for you.
Yeah.
How are you feeling? You have to approach it very, very carefully because, and we talked about this before, Fane, we're building a very, very strong culture down there of guys of young blokes that want to be there. So you need to be very, very careful about upsetting that apple cart and who you do it to. So you want someone that wants to go, and so that's the reason why I would ask the question.
I think the way you've described it is extremely appropriate, Pete, in that you would wrap your arms around the player and say, look, we love you here, but we were aware that, at some stages over the last 12 months, thoughts of home were in your mind. We may have an opportunity to facilitate that if it's something that you still want to consider. Put the ball back in the lad's court and give them the opportunity to part on good terms and, everyone's a winner sort of thing. I think that's exactly the way that it would be approached, and that's why I think that Fisher is really the only one that would be in the frame, assuming that he's willing. Do 2 first and Fisher Mackesy get it done?
Probably not. Probably not, because North Melbourne have made it very clear that their offer from Richmond was, I know it was 3 firsts. Was any players involved? Yes, it was.
It wasn't 3 firsts. Come on, Macca.
Was it 2
supposed
firsts?
to be the one it was 7, 16, 20 something or other, and Callum Jones.
Okay.
Callum, whatever his name, the guy that they ended up getting.
Yep.
Yeah, it wasn't anywhere near as good as ours.
I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they're going to do it no matter what we offer, but I think the one that you could shake loose is the GWS pick 2.
Yeah, you mentioned before that the word was around that they were into Mac Andrew.
Yep.
If they're into Mac Andrew, I can see them dropping down. But if they're into Callaghan, then they won't budge, obviously.
No. So you just got to. It depends on where all those cards fall.
Yeah, I think there's the top. The nature of the draft this year and the fact that there's so much talent that is underexposed, even though they've managed to play a few championship games in the latter half of the year, just makes the top half of the draw fascinating this year. And I think there's a lot of teams that are going to be vying for any edge they can or any sort of leverage they can. My personal opinion is if we don't jag Horn, I actually think we'll split the pick with Richmond. That's what I think we'll do.
Quite possible.
I think we're probably more likely to do that because to get 2 spots up the draft, Peter, to get Callaghan, who's a potential flight risk, to me is fraught with danger.
Mm-hmm.
And given the other players that you mentioned that are certainly in the frame, Goda, etc., who are accessible at 7, and I think what's Richmond's other pick? 13, 7 and 13, 15.
Yeah, 13. 15, is it?
15.
Yeah, so 7 and 15 gets us a Gota and maybe a Draper or someone of that ilk. If Draper's out of the frame because of it, and I think that we would happily walk away from the draft with Dawson, Gota, someone of his ilk, and someone like Draper. I think that would be a successful draft and a successful trade period, and I think we'd be happy with that. Going all in to get 2 spots up the draft for a player like Callaghan, I think is more trouble than it's worth. Going all in to get up the draft to get a lad like Jason Horn, who, by all reports, Peter Amaka had coffee with Matthew Nix on Saturday. Which is why I still think there's 2.0 on the table, ready to shoot off.
I hope you're right.
He definitely had coffee with Matty Nix on the weekend.
So, if we were to split those picks, Fiend, if that's the way we're going to go and pick 2 players, then what happens with 33? Noting also that Reedy they were very, very strong in that the downgrade for 33 was off limits. So I'm not sure whether that's just being negotiating stuff or whether they've got somebody in mind. I'm not sure.
Look, it's possible. I don't know that end of the draft well enough to think of unless they think. I mean, there's no way that Wanganeen Miller drops down that low, in my opinion.
I reckon he'd get at 33. Now, who was the lad that they were chasing from Melbourne? Not chasing, but they had a meeting with.
The lad from
that lad?
The Country Norwood lad.
Yep.
Keegan.
Can't think of his name. Cade somebody?
Cade? Something like that?
It was an emergency in the Melbourne side, in the grand final side.
Not Peter Caven, Macca.
No, I didn't. I said Chambers, something like that.
You know who is a carbon copy of that player that I think would be available about 33 would be Cooper Murley.
Yeah, well, Murley's one. Yeah. Murley's
he's a carbon
dropped
copy
right out of the equation.
right out of the equation because of his injuries this year.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's just
Chandler.
It'll be interesting. Yeah, that's right, Cade Chandler. So it'll be just interesting to see what they do with 33 if they split those picks. That's 3. And then Dawson, that's 4 spots gone, so there'll be no upgrades from the rookie list in that case.
Yeah, and I actually think they're probably more likely to try and turn 33 into a next year's pick. To be honest with you.
Yeah, they might do.
I think that's probably more what they would hope. Whether they can manipulate that somehow. Sorry, Matt, go on.
I was just going to say it's interesting that we did chase Kate Chandler from Melbourne, because that is a silent indictment of our small forwards. The very fact that we've got several small forwards, yet we still feel we have to go out and get a small forward. So that is an absolute indictment of the ones that we have.
Well, that's assuming that's the target. I think they will really want to try and push one of the rookies up onto the senior list, Pete, because otherwise, if they don't, next year it gives us a bit of a squeeze in terms of blokes having to come up onto the senior list. And I think if we don't do one this year, it might cause us a few problems next year. So I don't think that's why I think the split with Richmond is on, giving us those 2 first-round picks, and then that'll be it with an upgrade. That'll be the 3 picks that we need to do done. I forget who it is, but someone. I forget. I won't quote them because I forget who it said. But to be perfectly honest with you, our rebuild isn't that far away, and I think that's why they're prepared to go so hard on Jason, because if you add Jason and Dawson to our midfield, I think we could almost sit on that deck for a year and see how that rolls in terms of Berry, Schoenberg, Dawson, Horn, Francis, with the older stages like Laird and maybe a bit of Matty Crouch and certainly a bit of Benny Keys, etc. There's not a lot of room left in that group.
Pedler.
And Pedler as well. Braden could probably play up the ground. Yeah, I mentioned Berry. Because by all report, I'm not as sold as everyone. I'm not as fixated as everyone on this whole get Lukosius back next year. I don't think Lukosius is coming back to Adelaide. I think Isaac might with a second rounder. But next year's draft is a tall draft. And I would think that we might just be looking at maybe one more tall, depending on what happens with Fish. One more tall up forward to free up Riley a little bit. And next year's draft will be that. And I think that's why they're willing to give up next year's first rounder for this year's first pick, because I honestly don't think... I think if Jack Lukosius comes back to South Australia, will beat a Port, unfortunately.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised. The other thing I would say about Callaghan is that the other thing that I found interesting that really went out of his way to make that comment about the fact that, we'll be backing our club and our culture in, and we don't care we're getting the best talent, and we don't. And I know that's kind of a trotted out line. It felt to me when he said it, it felt pointed. To me, he did everything he could, but actually say the name Callaghan. And so, he was interviewed the other day, and look, he made his comments about Luke Beveridge. I mean, we all know that, but he said that he was happy to go anywhere, and I guess there's been plenty of players that have come over and have been homesick or whatever, and ended up staying the distance. And so I guess we sort of we've got a lot of Victorian boys in there now, and they all seem a pretty happy bunch.
Yep.
And so I think that they'll just back Nick's in, and say, look, he may he may have Luke Beveridge in his family, but we're going to back we'll back Nick's in to keep him. And so look, you could say exactly the same about Erasmus as well, because I think that he could well be on our radar as well. And the interesting thing with Erasmus, he's actually really close friends with Georgiadis over at Port. So he's I said to Macca the other night, he's at least got a friend. He's at least got somebody in Adelaide that he knows and that he has trained with and acts as a mentor. So I think that's probably that's at least a start, I suppose.
Yeah.
You're talking about upgrading to the GWS pick 2. What do you think it would take to upgrade our pick 4 to pick 2?
I reckon just pick 4, and if we've still got the Melbourne future first, we'd probably do it. It might even be pick 4 and our second next year, maybe. It should be reasonably low pick, sort of around the 20 to 25 mark. You would think, roughly. You could sell it as that anyway.
Yeah. Well, I'm with you. I think that you do take the chance on him if we can get into that situation that we can get Callaghan, because I think he is the best player that would be available apart from Horn. When I'm relating that back to the needs that we have, and as you say, there's been many players who say they're going to go home or don't want to, don't want to move interstate, but they do, and they become part of the club. So
it's unquestionably a risk. But I've got a funny feeling they just feel like they're on a roll down there at the moment.
Sorry, that they think they're on a roll.
I just feel like our club thinks it's on a bit of a roll at the moment. I think they'll just back themselves.
Yes, I think you're 100% right.
I'm happy to take the opposing view on that one. Not like
automatically. Automatically. Once I said something, you got to go the other way.
No, that's not true at all. There's a couple of things that I would probably say. We've got a very good core bunch of young midfielders, and a lot of them are South Australian boys. I don't know. I won't mind at all if they take Callaghan and they try and turn him into a career player, a career crow, I should say. I just don't know whether they'll be willing to spend what they need to get up the draft. If they take him at 4, well and good, that's fine. We'll see how we go. They could go for 2. Gold Coast number 3's in play as well, although that's probably, we don't have the cattle to probably take that from them, I don't think, because they're looking for players, aren't they, Pete?
No, exactly. They're looking actually for future draft picks for next year.
For a while there, they were saying they wanted players, not picks.
Yep.
Yeah. So it'll be, look, who knows? And I think even the clubs themselves probably only have a 75% inkling of what's going to happen, because things can change, and of course they can continue to trade picks all the way up to draft night. So it's not just tomorrow. That's just players. They can go all the way up to draft night, and of course there's live pick trading during the draft. So lots and lots to play out.
Absolutely.
Look, there's not probably a lot. Certainly, in terms of other irons in the fire, Peter, do you see any other play for any other player? I can't see anything apart from the young lad from Melbourne that you mentioned that might.
No, and he as soon as we sniffed around, Melbourne offered him a 2-year deal. So
yeah,
he was snuffed out very, very quickly, and it just seems like it would be too late now unless they've got incredible, secrecy wraps over things that are going on, to produce a name, on the afternoon of trade week would just seem, unrealistic. To suddenly pluck an Isaac Rankin or out of the fire and start trying to deal for a contracted player or something like that just doesn't seem feasible to me. So I would think that when they're talking about business still to be done, I just think it just means draft picks, mate. That's my gut feel.
We got Nom from North on the chat. Just hang on, Mac. We got Nom in the chat from North, who's asked whether North would take Dawson. Oh, I don't think so. I don't think it'd be very good karma for a club to take a player that clearly wants to go home for personal reasons. And let's not forget that there's an Adelaide connection at North with David Noble. So I think the dialogue would be fairly open. I just don't think it'd be a good look by North to do that, and I don't think that they would.
And they are the only one. Well, they are the only club that could do it. They do have the club, the cap space to do it. We'd put $1 million and a bit on him for the first year, and The other two, Gold Coast, Collingwood, they've got no money, and so there's no danger there. North Melbourne, the only danger, and as you quite rightly said, we've got a very good relationship with Noble, and I think we would have already spoken to him about that, and that I don't think that it would be very poor form in the sense that they taking a player who's trying to get home and taking him away to a totally different situation. So I don't see that happening at all.
No, I think if you're North, you'd ask the question. You'd definitely ring up.
Yeah.
You'd ring Dowdy up. You'd ask the question for sure.
Yeah, and if you're Dowdy, you just knock it straight on the head. Otherwise, you're not doing your job.
Exactly.
All right. Well, look.
There's one player I was going to raise that is going to be on the market. He's a South Australian, and nobody's busting their bum to get him. Dumont from North Melbourne. He's a midfielder.
You're right, Macca. He did come up. He has come up in conversation.
Yeah, he's 26 years of age, 186 centimetres. He's a midfielder. He didn't have the greatest years this year. He normally averages about 23 possessions a game. This year he averaged about 18 possessions a game, and North have told me he won't be required next year. So, nobody's going to trade for him. They're just going to wait till he gets delisted. So, is he somebody that we pick up, or is this somebody we just let pass by?
Pete?
It's a good question, and in some respects, I'm attracted to getting a player like that, and I think Nick's would be. I think he fits his game plan. The thing that I wouldn't be able to get my head around is the list space. I'm just not quite sure where you fit him in.
Yeah. I think they'd prefer to keep Ryan. I think they'd prefer to keep Ronan and Ben on the list than make a spot for Trent. I know you made a spot. I know you made a case for Dumont earlier in the season, Pete, and valid points as well. And I'm not as anti him as a lot of people are either. But it doesn't seem to be the direction that we're going, and it doesn't seem to fit our list profile, does it?
Oh, he's only just turned 26, so he'd be 26.
Yeah, but Reid wants speed on the outside, and that's not Trent.
No, that's probably true too. I just don't know
where he gets a spot.
Yeah,
we just don't know his spots. And see, early in the year when we had this discussion, Fane, and I was quite open to the idea. At that stage, I'm thinking, well, we're looking to get guys in. I didn't see the list sort of falling as it's fallen.
Yeah,
we're just hide as you like.
Yeah, well, as I say, he's probably going to be there free for either us or Port, and I can't see Port taking him either. So,
and I think you're right, Finn. I think the Matty Crouch signing, probably put the death knell on that. I think that if you don't sign Matty Crouch, you might sign Dumont.
Yeah.
Yeah. The next question I would raise in Finn would be is the Davis O'Connor situation. What do you think that Well, I can't see how that Davis can survive, because our situation is going to be that at the moment we've got 4 picks available to us, but 0 picks available in the rookie list, because we've got 6 on the rookie list still.
Yep.
Now, if we upgrade 2 players, or maybe might only be 1 player, you'd always like to take a couple of rookie players, and just depending on how trades go and all the rest of it, and how many picks we've actually got to use live, and the point about that we really should be upgrading Butts and Keys. That means, would that mean O'Connor would go?
There's clearly a reason why they've kept them on, why they haven't delisted them, and why they've kept them on ice. There's clearly a reason, and I think they would have cut Ben Davis loose had they had no intention at all of keeping him on the list, Macca. So I think Benny is probably the last one signed, but I can certainly see a situation where both he and Ronan stay on the list. Can you, Pete?
Yeah, because they might swap because Davis is on the rookie list and Ronan's on the main list. Well, they might just switch O'Connor down to the rookie list. That frees up one of the upgrade spots.
Yep.
Extraordinary when you think that two of our most important players in our team are both rookies in Keys and Butts. So you would think that they want to get both of those two. So you might be able to switch O'Connor and one of them around, and then upgrade the other and take Dawson and two from the draft, maybe something like that. It's like I said though, it's so tight, and it just needs there's a few machinations for the list management group to go through just to get everybody slotted into their spot.
Yeah, look, I think you're right, Dean, that they've left it to the last minute to see what the results of their trading. Yeah, and it might mean that they both stay, and it might, and like as Pete said, shuffle them around a bit. Or it might mean that at the end of one of them has to go. It might even mean that both have to go, but just depends on how things roll during the trade period. So, I thought Davis, when he got 2 or 3 games in a row, actually didn't look too bad in defence. But gee, we've got so many other defenders there anyhow. So
that's why I think he's last signed, Macca, because I think he did quite well, and I've always been a bit of a Ben fan, as you have too, Peter. And I think he's been desperately unlucky at times with some injuries that have hampered his progress and some selection policies of past coaching panels. That said, like you mentioned, we've got a ton of running half-backs, and if that's the spot that keeps him on the list, then he's pushing shit uphill in terms of getting in front of some of the others at the moment.
Quick question for you both. Ben Davis is commonly thought of as one of, if not the most popular player at the club.
Yep.
Incredibly important for us and the culture that's going on down there, and apparently, significant role model for a kid like Newchurch. Where does that sit in terms of the value of Ben on the list? Now, I mean, I know that you can't just, you've got to be able to play football as well. How much does that, do you think, weigh into the decision on Benny Davis?
It might, given the situation with Tex Walker, that might actually weigh into it quite a bit, Pete.
Look, it could. If he gets delisted, there's more than a strong possibility that he doesn't get picked up and he ends up staying around in the SANFL and maybe end up being an SANFL top-up player for us. Who knows? But I mean, it's a good point you raise. He was probably one of the strongest to come out after that Tex situation went down, and we haven't spoken a lot about the Tex situation, but will that weigh heavily on Ben when Tex is inevitably welcomed back to the club for his final season? I guess that could almost fall either way, couldn't it?
Mm.
Yeah,
interesting point though. Pete.
He would absolutely be the leader down there of the Indigenous boys that are down there, and not just the Indigenous boys. I'm talking all the players really. I think he's as I understand it, immensely popular down there. Yeah. And so anyway, I just wonder with everything that happened, and whether there's a spot. And look, you're quite right. There may be other ways of keeping him involved without keeping him on the rookie list. But I just put it out there as a potential something that adds to the flavour of Ben than just his football.
So you in that situation, you'd probably say that he's got probably more chance of staying on than O'Connor.
Yeah, I don't think it weighs heavily enough, to be honest with you. I mean, we've got to look at our list profile, and we've got 930 running halfbacks, Mac, and he's clearly last on that list. Just you only have to watch what's been going on. I mean, to wind it up, that piece of the conversation, I think if anyone drops out, it'll be Ben, unfortunately. I think they want to keep going with Ronan because he's a good-sized midfielder. He's got good pedigree, and as Justin Reid says, they need to expose more of these kids to see exactly what they've got, and I don't think they could say hand on heart that they've given Ronan enough opportunity to really expose what he's capable of.
2 games.
He played some very good SANFL football this year, Fane.
Yeah, exactly. So, and they could probably argue that they've seen enough of Ben to know what he's got and what his ceiling is. And with such a tight list, he'd normally be a player that you keep on the list. But with such a tight list, I think he's probably the sacrificial lamb if it comes to that.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
So look, lots to play out tomorrow, obviously, but I think my personal view is that there's lots more to play out between now and draft night. And draft night's going to be fascinating, I think. So plenty yet to talk about. In the meantime, Peter, Macca, it's been lovely as always to have you both on board.
Always good, mate. Always good to catch up for a chat.
Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and also on YouTube. I appreciate all your support, and the chat's been extremely lively. So fantastic. Don't forget, if you want to support us, get around us on patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. Don't forget, if you want to see all the news amalgamated into one place from the AFL, you can go to aflcrowcast.com, where we aggregate all the different news sites around the place, so you can see all the articles in one spot, which is handy. That's it. We'll be back. I guess we'll be back next week, won't we, Pete? To round it up.
Oh, why not? Why not?
We'll see how we go. Probably. Macca, thanks very much.
Love you all.
We'll see you next Tuesday night. Good night, everyone.
Night all.